I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Congressman Lee Zeldin revealed his campaign's Student First plan for New York during Monday's remarks in Queens. The Republican congressman discussed parental rights when it comes to education, which has been a popular Republican talking point. Zeldin is running for governor of New York and was joined by Allison Esposito, who is New York's GOP lieutenant governor candidate. Here's more from the New York Republican.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cherie Murray. Recently, the New York City Albany legislators passed a $220 billion budget. It was approved without any mention of lifting the cap on charter schools. Instead, politicians in Albany chose not to prioritize our children's education. As a New York City parent, I was incredibly disappointed to see that the state's budget did not include any provisions for the growth of charter schools. Instead, what I saw was money for more casinos, a new football stadium, and to-go alcohol. This is unacceptable. Parents need an advocate in Albany. All children deserve access to great schools, but right now, parents have very few options. Parents are asking for lawmakers to please listen to their needs and lift the cap on charter schools. Access to a quality education is a great civil rights issue of our time. The clock is ticking, but there is still time to act. The future of New York's children is at stake. As a charter school parent living in New York City, I understand just how important charters are to my community. Lifting the cap on charter schools is a direct investment in our children's education. Do the right thing, Albany lawmakers. Raise the cap on charter schools. Our children are counting on you. And now I would like to introduce Congressman Lee Zeldin, gubernatorial candidate for New York State. Congressman?
Thank you, Cherie.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everybody for being here today. And we're also joined by our state's next Lieutenant Governor, Allison Esposito. This morning is an opportunity for us to unveil our Students First plan for New York. I'm a parent. I have identical girls, 15 years old. They are currently finishing up 10th grade. Some basic principles that I believe should be driving those elected to office and educators as well. That before we get into some policy, I believe these principles are currently, unfortunately, lacking. One is that the parents of New York have a fundamental right to control the upbringing of their children. When parents make a decision to send their kids off to school, they're not relinquishing that right to the government, to educators. We believe that the best thing for a child's education is for a parent to be as involved as possible. That the best thing for a child's upbringing is for a parental unit, a family unit, to be as strong as possible. Unfortunately, right now, some respond to that position by saying, well, if you want to be involved in your son and daughter's education, why don't you just homeschool your kid? And for those parents who do choose to homeschool their children, those kids should be set up for success. But for some parents, they weren't. Maybe they want their kids to go off to school and be with other kids. There is an advantage to be able to send your kid off to school. But whatever educational choice a parent decides, it's about students first. It's about parental involvement. And what shouldn't be lost is that we do love and appreciate our teachers. I have great respect for that teacher who's willing to sign up for the toughest assignment, capable of getting an easier position somewhere else, but instead they choose to take on the tougher duty. And God bless those teachers who are willing to sign up for those jobs. It's important here in the state of New York as we look towards school board elections coming up next week, and we see great candidates who are stepping up to run for school board, that New York voters and parents, families that have sons, daughters, grandkids, understanding that these grade school students don't have a vote, we have to get more involved in these local school board elections. So we are here today encouraging New York parents, New York families, New York voters to vote in next week's school board elections. Get informed on the budget, get informed on the candidates, and participate. The turnout has been abysmal. As far as policies go, my daughters go to a public school that I went to. My mother's a retired public school teacher. We also have some poor performing public schools in the state. And I think of that kid stuck in multi-generational poverty in a poor performing New York City public school. You can't treat these kids like they are guinea pigs. For years, stuck in that poor performing school when there is a good quality education to be had somewhere close to home. On charter schools is part of the solution. The wrong answer is telling that kid stuck in that poor performing public school that they have to stay there. That system that is failing them, we should be finding ways to get it to up its performance, but these kids should not be trapped there, regardless of ethnicity and race, religion, wealth. Our kids all deserve access to a quality education in the state of New York. I remember when I was in 11th grade going through health class. I remember some of the sex education material that we learned in that high school setting. What's very important is that it should be a policy here in the state of New York that whenever any second grader or fourth grader raises their hand with their first creative question, maybe it came from an older brother at home, the teacher shouldn't be taking it upon themselves outside the normal curriculum and standards inside of that school to answer however they want to answer that question, and trying to give the rest of that class an education on whatever the teacher wants to say the right answer. And it should be the policy in the state of New York that that teacher speaks to that kid's parent and lets the parent take care of that at home. We should be promoting more advanced academics in the state of New York. This is something that I believe Mayor Adams is getting right. Mayor de Blasio had wrong. Mayor de Blasio believed that we should get rid of advanced academics in the name of equity, that if you're reading or doing math at a higher grade level, that it's not fair for the student who isn't reading or doing math at the same level. We should be challenging all of our students to go as far as possible with their education. If you enter the third grade at an 8th grade math level, the system working should get that kid at a 9th grade math level by November if possible, and a 10th grade math level by February if it's obtainable, and 11th grade math level by April. And you know what? We should all be celebrating the system working by pushing these kids to go further. The specialty schools is another example of something that Mayor de Blasio had wrong. We should be encouraging merit-based entry into specialty schools. See, Mayor de Blasio said he wanted New York City specialty schools to look like America. And you know, when he was saying that, he actually wasn't referring to the white kids. There were Asian American students who were crushing their entrance exams. They were working hard for those tests. They were earning entry into those specialty schools, and Mayor de Blasio wanted to discourage that hard work and that success for entry into that specialty school. We should be encouraging all students to go as far as possible and rewarding high performance. And it's important that inside of these school systems that we are doing more to teach civics and American history, teaching our students about why and how they get to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Sometimes teachers are finding the bandwidth to teach students about why they believe there are faults in our country and not enough room left in the classroom with their time, with their curriculum, with their valuable experience, where that student looks up to the teacher to provide these lessons of why and how this country is as great as it is. See, some schools get this very, very great. It's Veterans Day, and the elementary school students are memorizing the national anthem and God Bless the USA and God Bless America, and they're bringing in local vets and they're saying thank you, and they're learning about what Veterans Day is about and how we have these amazing men and women who answer the call to serve, and they're willing to lay down their life in defense of our country and our freedom. Maybe every school in the state of New York should be having that experience on Veterans Day. I believe that we need to make our high school diplomas more valuable. See, some kids are made to go to college. They are set that once they get their high school diploma, that will be their ticket to go to college. But for other kids, they're not going off to higher ed. And maybe they're deciding whether or not they should stay inside of school, whether to attend, whether to learn, whether to graduate. If they don't go to school, if they don't participate, if they don't graduate, there may be a very different trajectory in life where trouble awaits and they're unable to obtain a job and they're able to have an independent, successful life. That decision made by that 8th grader or 10th grader or 11th grader to stop going to school can have a permanent negative effect on their trajectory. Now listen, some students don't go off to college and they're very successful. Some students haven't even graduated high school and they've been very successful. But we need more kids going to class and off the streets. In order to make that high school diploma more valuable, there needs to be more training on equipment, experience in school, apprenticeship programs, networking with local trades. That diploma can be worth more. That you graduate one day in June and the next day there's a good paying job waiting for you. That vision of that for a 9th grader or 10th grader may be the motivation of them to go to school, because that diploma might not be a ticket to go to college, but maybe that diploma is a ticket for a good paying job. For Allison Esposito and I, we believe that students first is the foundation of a plan for success. It is first and foremost about students. It's about parental involvement. It's about strong family unit. It's about school choice. It's about all forms of education performing as exceptionally as possible. It is about all of us, regardless of whether we are Republican or Democrat or independent, whether you are a conservative, a moderate, or a liberal. It doesn't matter your ideology. It doesn't matter your party affiliation, whatever county or region you might be from in New York. We all have to work together. Put politics aside and do it for the kids. Right now, Albany is failing. Right now, Albany is failing our young ones. They don't have a vote. Lastly, I want to touch on the fact that inside of New York City right now, we still have toddlers who are masked up. 4 years old. We're just coming off Autism Awareness Month. These kids are learning how to speak 2 years into a pandemic and still all masked up all day long. You're learning how to speak and you can't see a teacher's face. The teacher can't see your face. Now, the entire pandemic, even when the numbers were high, these 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds were at the lowest level of risk for a serious infection for COVID, lowest transmissibility rate. And right now, these 4-year-olds, they don't have a vote. If they had a right to vote, if they were voting this November, there would be no masks on toddlers. Now, I would say it might not be the smartest idea to give 4-year-olds the right to vote. I can say, though, that if 4-year-olds did have a right to vote, I would confidently predict that they would be single-issue voters, asking whether or not the candidate will make them wear masks all day to school. And these 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds would surely be informed, experienced voters on that front. I would call on the city, and I've done it in the past, to remove the school mask mandate on our toddlers, and we should not bring it back. And we should be looking at pandemic era policies, because you might get past a November 8th election and a decision is made to move back to models of learning that I don't believe were successful. We need our students in school, full-time, in-person learning. Remote learning is no replacement. Now, if you want to use video technology because you're working with a tutor on the evenings or on the weekends, that's one thing. And that could be a benefit. And we need to make sure that our students have access to the technology, that lower income students aren't left behind, that we deal with broadband issues that are very real for learning here in the state of New York. But what we can't do is allow any return to remote learning in place of full-time in-person learning. All of these components are part of our Students First plan for New York. Now, I'm honored that we're joined here by Allison Esposito, and I'm going to bring her up to share her thoughts in a few words. I thank the parents who are here, Sharif, for your leadership. We've now spoken on numerous occasions, and we all know where your heart and your passion lies, and why you're here, why you all are here. It's for our kids. 6 months from yesterday is an election where we are going to decide the future of our states, the future of our communities, the future of our country. We have to keep in mind that our kids don't have a vote. We have to vote for them, and we have to move the direction of education here in the state of New York in a much better way than how it's heading right now. Allison Esposito is a 24-year veteran of the NYPD, Deputy Inspector Commanding Officer of the 70th Precinct in Brooklyn. Allison was 24 years along a 40-year career in the NYPD. Her father was NYPD Chief Esposito. Allison would have become a chief in the NYPD. She retired not just to become our state's next lieutenant governor. Allison had to retire in order to become a candidate to be our state's next lieutenant governor. There's no doubt that Allison Esposito is all in to keep our streets safe, to make sure that the attacks on our wallets are reversed, that our freedoms are defended, and the quality of education in our schools is improved. Without any further ado, our state's next lieutenant governor, Allison Esposito.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Just a few words. The congressman outlined the policy. I'm here to say this is not political. This is about putting our children first. We owe our children more. The pandemic highlighted problems in some of our schooling, and we are here to outline this policy to try to fix it. We know some of the most successful businesses are run and they leave a bench, they leave a legacy. This is what we owe to our students. Proper training, proper education. We need to teach them facts. We need to teach them history. We need to make sure that they are set up to be the absolute best they can be. We encourage parents to be as involved as possible in their children's upbringing and education. It's necessary. As the congressman said, you do not relinquish your right as a parent by sending your child to school. We owe our children better. School choice is something that every New York parent is entitled to. If you want to break generational poverty, it is by educating our children and setting them up for the best success that they can be. This is how we ensure that one of the greatest states in the greatest country of the world flourishes, prospers. This is our future. These are our future leaders. We owe it to them to set them up for success. As the congressman said, I spent 24 years in the New York City Police Department. And when schools fail, our children enter into a life that exposes them to the criminal justice system. This is not what we want. This is not political. This is not what a certain party wants. We want our children to be set up for success no matter what they choose in life. Our schools are the way we're going to do it with them. And we will work alongside parents, and we will make sure parents have a voice in Albany to make sure New York's children are the brightest and have the brightest future possible. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Paul King, and I'm a product of the system. I went to PS 114, Junior High School 180, Beach Channel High School, and I got a great public school education. And sadly, I'm not confident that today's kids in New York will get the same. We have students and teachers trapped in a failed system that's delivering inadequate academic performance year after year after year. We need to break out of this trap with innovation and choice. We need magnet schools, charter schools. We need targeted online education to supplement what's going on in the classroom. We need to give our parents and these kids the tools they need to succeed. And I applaud Mr. Zeldin and Ms. Esposito for this Student First initiative. It's a great step in the right direction because our country, our state, our kids, our parents, our teachers all need innovation and choice in education. Let's give it to them. I look forward to working with these great people moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Paul King for Congress. I'll now open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions for the congressman, candidate for governor, and also lieutenant governor.
Congressman Zeldin, this issue of school reform was such a big winner for Republicans over the last year, particularly in Virginia with Governor Duncan's campaign. What can you learn from his campaign to use maybe as a playbook to repeat that recipe? What kind of energy are you seeing out of parents here in New York State about these issues like CRT, sex in the classroom for young kids that you're focusing in on that you hope to be the winner?
Our Students First plan for New York has so many components to it. I mean, we're going to post everything on our website. We shared many of the ideas here. It also includes curriculum and textbook transparency inside of grade schools. We have an issue inside of higher ed where I've heard from City University of New York professors who are Jewish who resigned because of what they felt was anti-Semitic harassment and pressure that they were facing inside of higher ed. I believe that the state shouldn't have gotten rid of the religious exemption a few years ago. I do not believe the state should require the COVID vaccine in order to attend classes in the fall. We could talk all day on all the different components to this. And before the Virginia gubernatorial race, we were talking about education. This is a conversation that in many respects it's been going on for years and decades and generations. I will say as you talk to voters, to most directly answer your question, the mama bears are awakened. And I could go to Flushing, Queens, and I could be speaking to a loyal, liberal, Democrat, Asian American parent. New York City specialty schools. When I was talking to her about some of the divisive curriculums that she's experiencing inside of her child's education, this transcends politics. This transcends partisanship. And these active moms and dads all across the state of New York are very motivated to do their part to move education in the state in a much better direction. I do believe that this is an issue that should be debated as we move towards the November general election. I have heard that the governor has a top 3 priority list of items that she wants this election to be about, and I'll let her answer as to what she has privately stated is going to be her top 3 issues, but I'll give you some hints. They don't include education, they don't include safety, they don't include the economy, they don't include COVID or any of these restrictions, and that list goes on. Now, as you travel around the state and you ask the average voter, we could take a field trip from here, ask the average voter, what's the issue that is most important to you? What's on your mind? They are hitting their breaking point in this state. They are this close to leaving. Everywhere I go, every single day this happens to me where people tell me that they are leaving the state or they're thinking about leaving the state. They never thought about it before. People tell me if you don't win, I'm leaving. We already lead the whole country in population loss. And I would encourage the governor to do some serious soul searching. What is most important for New York voters? She described herself as the mother of all 62 counties. If you want to actually represent the millions upon millions of New Yorkers, she needs to do some massive soul searching right now. That she is going to lay out a top three items for her, and it's not going to include education or the economy or safety, and that's a huge mistake on her part. And I do believe that this is an issue that should be debated and part of this fall campaign.
Congressman, let me ask you about an issue that she has said openly will be a top issue for her. The Supreme Court leak from last week talking about the issue of abortion. I've seen your statements. I know you have very serious, valid concerns about the leak itself. On abortion, will you push for bans or restrictions in New York State as governor?
Let's be realistic for a second instead of playing Kathy Hochul's games, because she actually wants this to be her number one issue and her number three issue. It's actually two of her top three issues. She wants it to be abortion. Now, regardless of where I stand on an issue or where she stands on an issue, the reality is the law right now in New York is the law in New York. So the day before the Supreme Court issues their decision, the morning that we all wake up and they issue their decision, and the morning after they issue the decision, if the draft statement actually became the final decision, do you know that the law in New York doesn't change at all? Do you know that she's not? No. But they've gone much further than that. So it's the law in New York that allows late-term partial birth abortions. It allows non-doctors to perform abortions. Why isn't Kathy Hochul talking about adoption? Why isn't Kathy Hochul talking about the need for parental consent or informed consent?
Would you seek to change some of that on
Listen,
the
the first
edge
thing,
in the law?
the reality is, we're going to have a balance of power in January. The state assembly is going to be Democrat. The Democratic-controlled New York State Assembly is not going to be sending me a bill that is going to be rolling this stuff back.
But you have quite a lot of power in budget
No, listen.
negotiations, and I can cite other issues like LGBTQ marriage that passed because the budget was used. So would you use the budget, as Governor Cuomo famously did on social issues?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm sure that if Kathy Hochul was here, she would continue to ask this question. I have my position. She has her position. The law is what it is. And there's going to be a balance of power come January.
What do you
Now,
think?
as far as why am I running in this race, is because New Yorkers are hitting a breaking point and they're fleeing. That we lead the entire population, the entire country in population loss. And the reason why they are leaving is because they feel like if they go to some other state, they go to the Carolinas, they go to Tennessee, they go to Florida or Texas, they feel like their money will go further, they will live life safer, they will feel freer, so they're leaving. That's why I stepped up to run. That's why I'm in this race. That's what New Yorkers are talking about, the issues that New Yorkers are saying are the most important issues to them. And if you ask me, what are you going to do in the budget that's coming up? I believe that we should repeal cashless bail.
Thank you, Congressman.
I believe that we should repeal cashless bail. I believe that judges should have discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal record and seriousness of the offense on all offenses. Mayor Adams wants to go further. I agree with Mayor Adams. I would work with the mayor. I might be a Republican, he might be a Democrat, but it's our job to work together to find common ground however possible. When I look at the budget, first and foremost, I believe that the trajectory of spending in this state is out of control. We cannot sustain a $220 billion budget plus all of the new spending that they want. When I was in the state Senate, we had a self-imposed spending cap in the state. I believe that taxes need to get cut in the state so people can better afford to survive here. The budget should be about. And as far as the reality of the day, I'm not looking to waste energy and time for us to be chasing distractions that would never actually be in the final budget. Now, there might be a debate that is to be had, and you can't find common ground, but you try. And we'll see. I'm not here this morning to announce my first state budget. I have, during this campaign, revealed many different things I would fight for in that first state budget, but that is something that I'll roll out in January. And the first thing that I would say, aside from the campaign for governor, is going to be, what is the makeup in the state assembly and state senate? And we'll see, but voters will decide who's in the majority in the assembly and senate. Is there a supermajority? I hope not. There might be a balance of power. Maybe the Democrats control the assembly, maybe they control both, maybe the Republicans control the state senate. We'll see. We'll see what the voters decide that they want. Mandates are earned. You can't just say you won an election, so therefore you have a mandate to do whatever you want with regards to anything. But the reality that Kathy Hochul needs to come back down to is dealing in honesty and truth with voters, and trying to make it out as if the Supreme Court issues a decision and the law in New York is going to just automatically change is just 100% dishonest. But she's preying upon people to try to make them scared, and unfortunately what she's saying is just not true.
But Democrats are going a lot further than that. I mean, they're now passing and discussing passing all forms of protections in New York State, to perhaps do a constitutional amendment, new bills they're proposing to strengthen abortion laws. What do you make of that reaction? Or do you feel as though this is pretty much settled in New York and nothing more needs to be done?
Well, I think the Democrats in New York are going to try to find ways. I'm pro-life. There are New Yorkers who consider themselves to be pro-choice. They're in favor of abortion. They're in favor of, they have promoted positions that might be consistent, who are in favor of informed consent. They're informed. They're in favor of parental consent. And I think that the Democrats, while they are trying to create an issue, they're trying to. They are going to have a brutal November. They're going to lose control of the House of Representatives. This is going to be there's a huge enthusiasm gap, and they're trying to figure out a way to close the gap. This is about politics. This is about selfish calculations. So they'll try to find ways to go even further. You can't really go much further. But what's interesting about their idea to have a constitutional amendment, if you're talking about putting on the ballot an amendment that would allow an abortion at the end of the 9th month, just like the Democrats had a wake-up call when they lost on the vote on same-day voter registration last November, they lost out on the vote on no excuse absentee balloting. If you put that up to the voters of whether or not the voters of New York are in favor of the radical far-left positions of Kathy Hochul on this topic, New York voters will end up voting down a constitutional amendment to allow late-term partial birth abortion. No, she's way over her skis. And no matter how hard she tries to make this issue her streets safer, how we're going to make their wallets fuller, they're going to help their kids be more successful and have opportunity, and to make sure that we don't see a return to COVID restrictions that had harmful impacts on individuals and families and businesses and communities in the state.
Yeah, Democrats have seized on something you said recently about appointing a health commissioner who's pro-life. Is that something you feel strongly about doing, given where everything is?
I'm pro-life, and I'm the one running against Kathy Hochul. So she should, as opposed to, she likes to deal in unrealistic hypotheticals where, in her world, commissioner who consider themselves to be pro-life or pro-abortion, the law is the same. The law is the same. And Kathy Hochul needs to focus on her opponent, because she's trying to focus on imaginary shiny object individuals who are unnamed. The law is the law, and I'm standing right in front of her. If she wants to have this debate, let's have this debate. Let's have it right now. Let's have a debate about what's in the best interests for New Yorkers who care about not feeling safe on their streets and subways. Let's talk about whether or not Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg should be fired, whether or not he's doing a good job. She says cut him some slack. He just got there. He's doing his job. I believe that he should be fired. New York governor has the constitutional authority to fire a DA who refuses to enforce the law. She settled for almost nothing on the cashless bail changes. She got rolled. Her starting point was weak. And she went through a whole bunch of the budget process where she wasn't proposing any change. She said she needed to see data. You need to see data? How about you count up the amount of press clippings sitting on your desk? What about 93-year-old Connie Torrey in Syracuse who got murdered by someone out on cashless bail? Or the double manslaughter committed in Yonkers by someone released on cashless bail on an arson charge? And she wants to talk about crime as if every single crime only involves guns. You want to talk about illegal guns? We'll have the conversation. But you know, for the person who's pushed in front of an oncoming subway car and they get killed, that has nothing to do with firearms. The person stabbed to death in their home in Lower Manhattan, that doesn't have anything to do with guns. The person who's punched on the streets of Crown Heights this past Friday on their way to a Shabbat service in Great Neck, that had nothing to do with firearms. The Sikh cab driver who gets beaten up because they look a little different for that suspect, that had nothing to do with firearms. People are getting beaten with hammers. I mean, this is all happening right now in New York. Like small business owners getting looted over and over again and then having to close. Kathy Hochul doesn't want to talk about any of that because she's wrong on all the issues that matter most right now to New Yorkers who are thinking about their breaking point and are seriously thinking about fleeing this state. This is a rescue mission to save our state. We cannot afford 4 more years of one-party rule and outsized power of supermajorities and self-described socialists taking our state down the wrong path. And no matter how hard Kathy Hochul tries to talk about anything other than the issues that New Yorkers say are most important to them, she is not going to be able to hide from this debate. No matter how hard she puts in her paid campaign ads that she's out there working, the reality is if she was actually working, then that says even less about her job performance because she's clearly not listening, she's not leading, and she's not responding to the issues that New Yorkers are looking for leadership on. We don't want to be ruled by an emperor. New Yorkers want government restored to them. I believe that public service is about serving the public. Kathy Hochul believes that public service is about being served by the public. I'm the 4th highest ranking person in my house. My feet are firmly planted on the ground. My head does not get bigger because you call me a congressman or a state senator or a governor or anything else. We're all equal in this world. You get elected to a 4-year term as governor, you try to bring a positive influence on the people. One of the great reasons why we need term limits on top of it all. These people come in and they stay so long. Bring your ideas, bring your energy, you try to make a difference, and then you move along. To Kathy Hochul, she capitalized on Andrew Cuomo running for a 3rd term. She was getting ready to capitalize on Andrew Cuomo running for a 4th term. She had nothing to say about term limits until after Andrew Cuomo ended up resigning, and she still has nothing to say about all the scandals and corruption that now has us with our 3rd lieutenant governor in less than a year. She is not going to be able to run away from this fight because she wants to talk about some feigned outrage that the next health commissioner may or may not be pro-life, as if that changes the law. She is not going to be able to hide from this debate.
Just finally, I wasn't sure if you saw our poll we did with the Hill last week at Pix 11 that put you as the leading Republican candidate and showed this race as a toss-up, especially if Andrew Cuomo hopped in. What is your thoughts about standing on a debate stage with both Kathy Hochul and former Governor Cuomo, excuse me?
First, let me answer unselfishly. Andrew Cuomo should be as far removed from politics as possible. He has no business running for governor. He is very lucky that he hasn't been prosecuted. He should give back the over $5.1 million that he got in his self-congratulatory book deal. Accountability is still needed for using his taxpayer-funded staff to help write it. Accountability is still needed for the COVID testing preferential treatment at private residence of Cuomo administration friends and family done by state health department officials with the samples moved to the front of the line. And there are still thousands of families of dead New York State seniors who are demanding justice because they lost their loved one due to a deadly nursing home order and cover-up. Unselfishly, Andrew Cuomo should be as far removed from politics as possible. And no, he absolutely has not been vindicated. Selfishly? Oh, come on in. Join the race. Are you kidding me? I would love to stand on a debate stage with Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul. And quite frankly, all the scandals that we're talking about here, these are Cuomo-Hochul administration scandals. Cuomo has to account for it, but so does Kathy Hochul. Where was she? Was she complicit or out to lunch? Every time, she was silent with nothing to say. If Andrew Cuomo gets in, our margin of victory only increases. We feel good about the prospects of this campaign head-to-head with Kathy Hochul, but our ability to win by even more with Andrew Cuomo gets in the race, that only increases. Selfishly, knowing how Andrew Cuomo is wired, I would sit here and dare him to get in. I would double dare him to get him. I would call him a chicken. And I would try to do everything in my power to get him in this race and to be able to stand on that debate stage. So you could choose whether or not you want to report based on my selfish answer or my unselfish answer, or both, but that's my answer.
It would be fair to report both. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.